Hello and welcome to the CTN webinar. The topic today is steps to delivering relevant, resilient, and reliable digital services, and it's made possible by Everbridge. My name is Sanjog Aul. I am your host. I'm from CIO Talk Network. Just quick housekeeping announcements. You will have your microphones muted for now, but what you would find is that as we get started with our discussions, we would request you to unmute based on your comments that you make, and you'd like to make a comment, I will just request you to unmute so they can expand on it. And only other thing, we'll have, this is actually more of a workshop, so everyone talks. And of course, panelists will share their views, and we'll also invite audience members to share their views. And once we conclude the webinar, I just only request you to share your feedback and by filling up the feedback form that will pop up. So as we are going to get started, I know more people will keep joining. By show of hands, how many of you like music? All right, I see Jeff, Muhammad, Helen. Oh my God, you got music lovers here. Okay, and so let's take, and panelists should also, raise their hands if they like music, of course. And then they should also share what is your favorite song or symphony that totally takes you to a different level or to totally a different plane, and you enjoy the life that you're living.
I'll go first. I have a new song. It's called Look What You've Done by Tasha Latan. I don't know what it is. All of a sudden I heard it on the radio, and I've been listening to it for like the last 2 weeks. But it's very catchy, very connects to me at my heart layer. So
very nice. Very nice. Now, the reason I'm asking about this question, and one of the things which I find, at least I also enjoy music like all of you do, we are talking about digital services, and delivering them is no different than creating music, right? We need creativity, we need orchestration, we need to make sure that all the parties are performing at their best and suddenly nothing drops off, because otherwise it will very quickly convert from a music to a noise. How do we know a digital service is relevant? That is, it's truly delivering to what you had started with, in the sense, what was your goal? How do you prevent that there is no, prevent any disruptions, or if at all there is a disruption, how do you bounce back from it? How do you make sure their security and privacy concerns are handled properly? All of these things have to be discussed. So frankly, we could not find better people who are music maestros and the digital orchestra conductors that we have with us today, who are your panelists. And I'd like to introduce you to Viren Shah, who's the Chief Digital Officer with GE Appliances, Mark Miller, Chief Technology Officer with Party City, Nashira Layade, Chief Technology Officer with Realogy, and Eddie Borrero, Chief Information Security Officer from Blue Shield of California. What is it that we're going to do today? It's more going to be like a workshop. We'll start with a challenge inventory, means we will talk about the top challenges people are facing. Each panelist is facing, and audience will also share their views related to delivering digital services. And at that time, we're only talking challenges. Then we will jump into the solutioning, where we will talk about, so if you had these challenges, what did you do about them? And panelists will share their thoughts, and so will the audience members. And time permitting, we will also get into the Q&A. So please plug away in the Q&A box that is available to you to write down your questions. If you can tackle them at time of us inventorying challenges or solutions, we will. Otherwise, we'll take it at the tail end of the discussion. So with that said, Viren, let's start with you. In 3 minutes or less, could you just quickly tell about your organization, your role, of course, as a Chief Digital Officer, what you're dealing with, and what is that top challenge which holds you back from delivering resilient, relevant, and reliable digital services?
Thank you, Sanjog. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
All right. So, Viren Shah, Chief Digital Officer at GE Appliances, been with the company just about 3 years now. A lot of retail industry background. I've lived in 4 continents, so a lot of cultural aspects, understanding Still struggle with learning new things. It's not changed yet. From a challenge standpoint, we are being a manufacturing company, and our heart of what we do is making stuff and moving stuff. And supply chain is one area that we have faced a lot of challenges, but has brought a lot of opportunities for us, especially during the COVID times. And what I strongly believe is the data, the visibility, but most importantly, taking insights into action is where I feel we are working very hard to make a difference in our supply chain area.
So you're working hard there. So any specific challenge which I can write down for my notes that this is what keeps you up at night the most?
Taking insights into action.
Okay, that's fine. Mark, you next.
Well, I think really for us, we're not only a retailer, but we're also a manufacturing company. So we have challenges on both sides. But I think the one I'd like to present today, the one that keeps me up the most is providing a perfect customer experience through the entire COVID-19 pandemic. Because you can't provide a one-size-fits-all solution because every market is different. Every market has different restrictions. They're going through different phases. So how do we as a company provide a very agile and malleable customer experience that maybe from one state to the next is completely different? And a year later, we're still working with municipalities on the best way to service our customers, but still keep them safe and protect them.
So if you were to put, say, a word or a phrase to this challenge, what would you call that?
Really operational agility. Because to Viren's point, really the first problem is making sure that we have the product available to the customer. And so we have to win the supply chain battle first. And I'm sure like any manufacturer, we've had to take measures to really make sure that that plan is solid and our product is getting delivered to the warehouses and to the stores on time. So that's really step one. But step two is then making sure that the customer has them available on our digital platforms. And so that's really part of that operational agility, because we can deliver either through a delivery provider or directly through a curbside transaction.
Okay.
So some might be shut off in some markets, some might be open in others. And that operational agility really gives us the ability to meet the customer where they are instead of making the customer go to a one-size-fits-all experience.
All right. Now, before I let you go, I want to know what's your favorite music or symphony, for the record?
Well, I am a child of the 70s, so I am firmly in the Led Zeppelin Kashmir camp.
Okay.
And will remain there forever.
There you go. There you go. Nashira. Okay, so you are muted, Nashira.
Okay, so good afternoon again, everyone. Nashira Layade. I serve as Executive Vice President, Chief Technology Officer of Realogy Holdings Corporation. Realogy is the largest real estate brokerage in the United States. Most folks are not familiar with Realogy, but you are most certainly familiar with our brands: Sotheby's International Realty, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Better Homes and Gardens, ERA, and I think there's one more I'm missing, sorry. So in addition to our real estate brokerages, we also, our portfolio also includes Carter's Relocation, as well as Realogy Title Group. So as CTO of Business Services, I lead the company's end-to-end digital transformation journey to deliver both growth and value. I have specific oversight for cybersecurity, data privacy, infrastructure and operations, technology, finance, as well as our IT service delivery model. So we provide a wide variety of digital services for both internal as well as external clients. I would say the largest opportunity that we have is really getting our clients to, which for my side of the technology house, our internal clients, to really nail down the what that they are trying to solution for, so that we can ensure we create a truly relevant digital service.
So is it a challenge or is it an objective and you're trying to tackle it? so of course, every organization wants to have something which is relevant, resilient, and reliant. That's the goal. What holds you back if you were to summarize that in a word, phrase, or a sentence?
I would say it's really nailing down the value, right? So value, of course, is driven by relevance, and relevance is uniquely measured by adoption, which is really interesting because technology does not own the adoption side of it. So it's partnering with our businesses to increase the adoption of the digital service.
So adoption is the challenge to the degree that you would like it to be, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Eddie, now you get this special place because you heard the different challenges, but then your security side, like, you're running the security for Blue Shield of California and all these different things that happen. But in the day and age that we live in, security plays a very big role. What's your challenge which holds you back from letting these guys in their respective roles, whether business or technology leaders, to be able to do what they want to do, but then nobody loses their shirt, nobody's in the Wall Street Journal or in the media because of a breach?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me just do a quick intro. My name is Eddie Borrero. As Sanjog mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Blue Shield of California. And for those that don't know who Blue Shield is a mission-driven nonprofit healthcare organization or insurer. We have a particular mission to really make healthcare worthy of our friends and family and affordable. And so what that means is that we are really trying to drive a change in the healthcare industry as a whole. I think the pandemic has brought to the forefront an urgent need to create a digital health ecosystem in the United States, and that's what we're after. We're really trying to just ensure that, as a patient, you're not worried about things like what kind of doctor, or where can I find a doctor, or who can I see, or will my insurance cover this kind of medicine, that kind of thing. We really are focused on using kind of digitization and technology to drive a better healthcare experience as a whole. And as an insurer, we feel like we have the position to really drive that change across the entire industry. And so just to give some additional background, healthcare from a technology standpoint as an industry is behind the times. It's a laggard. And so as I stepped into this role a year ago, the thing that enticed me the most was this mission of digitizing and bringing technology to the forefront of healthcare. Now, how do I enable it, Sanjog? Around ensuring that my peers are moving as quickly as they can. To me, the biggest challenge is it's a cultural thing. I think as an industry, it's a cultural thing. Traditionally, technology was outsourced and delivered in kind of a waterfall methodology within healthcare. And as we know, that waterfall approach, and as you see within your own healthcare systems and your experiences, hasn't led to kind of cutting edge digital or technology kind of experiences. So my job really is about educating our employees and changing our culture to move from kind of waterfall to I think of it as secure agile, and really establishing kind of the tools and guardrails and processes that people can actually take advantage of to deliver this new experience in a secure and compliant way. And so, my approach is always to integrate what we do into how people work and make it easy for them to actually leverage our capabilities and tools. So we're really at the forefront of trying to expedite the migration from the old to the new. And I'll give you an example of that. Many of our products and services as a security team, we're leading the charge to get us to the cloud, for instance. We're leading the charge to set up how we actually build agile dev environments. We're leading the charge on how do we create kind of the agile teams that can deliver very effectively and very quickly. And then we're integrating into the business teams that are ahead of the curve, so to speak. So my challenge is how do we integrate and not slow things down, but ensure that teams are delivering securely by design.
So basically changing tires of a moving car?
That's right. I often use the term, building the plane while flying. So.
Okay, so now let's do this. Since we have got our flavors from the panelists, I would love for the audience members to share their challenges over chat. And I have got one from Muhammad. And Mohammed, I will request you, if possible, to just articulate your challenge while you've written it on operational agility a little bit, but love for you to see if you could share your inputs with us on what your challenge is truly. What are you facing?
Yeah, hi, this is Mohammed. I'm from a development bank, and the banks in financial industry. So see, even before COVID, people were very eager to hit the digital market. But my concern, as Mark very clearly pointed that out, is operational agility. You have to be ready before you hit the digital services. So you have to make sure that any kind of product that you are thinking of, or your company builds, or service you're providing, you need to have an infrastructure before you hit the digital market. If you don't have that infrastructure, now the customer has the digital medium in his pocket, in his at his laptop, at his home, so he can access you at any time. So you need to know to have that supply chain or service industry in terms of call centers or that kind of stuff has to be in the place to service the